and there's a constant interaction taking place between my biofield and this universe. Last year at IRVA, I kind of said, but maybe a better way to explain this is it's like a goldfish in a bowl full of water. The goldfish is more like a fish made of water moving through water. It's no different from the environment that it's in. It just thinks that it's separate. We have this same false identity that we are separate from our environment, when in fact we are as much a part of it as it is of us. So the implication is that your mind is constantly accessing information outside of the body. Now, we know this because we can measure it. Up to now, we used to use EEG as a way of measuring thoughts inside the brain. But there's a new tool called a magnetoencephalograph, MEG, which measures thoughts outside the brain without anything touching the body. And they are so sensitive that individual thoughts can be identified and isolated. So that's on the micro level. On the macro level, on the global level, we have things taking place like the Global Consciousness Project, where we have scientists like Dean Radin and others working on a project where they've established random event generators in a number of academic institutions and organizations around the world. And these things measure, it's very hard to explain actually very quickly. They measure things that don't fit the norm. They measure changes in the magnetic field. They seem to be measuring changes in consciousness that are taking place on the planet. Because at certain key points where there's a high emotional content, the random event generators go off the scale. They go out of probability. And one clear example of that was there was a peak in global consciousness at the moment when President Barack Obama made the oath of office on the day of his inauguration. And it was quite startling to see it. So there is some kind of field of consciousness there that we're able to measure through random event generators. So back to us, and how do we process information? Well, we know we have the subconscious mind, incredibly powerful. I think the latest estimate, it processes about 4 billion bits. That's a lot of zeros. 4 billion bits of information a second. Then we have the conscious mind, much, much weaker in terms of processing power, but has the ability to focus on things. The subconscious works with images, it works with visual imagery, sensations, emotions. The conscious mind, linear, logical, rational, organizes things in logical sequence. The conscious mind does time, the subconscious mind doesn't do time. Conscious mind organizes information in logical sequence, linear sequence, so that we can go back and find it. But in addition to those, we have these quantum fields of information. And I want to thank Lynn for the inspiration for this slide, because it came from his presentation on remote influencing that was done a few years ago. We know that the information comes in through the subconscious mind. But the problem is the subconscious finds it very difficult to communicate with the conscious mind, because they're speaking two different languages. It's like a Mac trying to talk to a PC. They just don't compute. Psychologists talk about the limen as being this barrier between the two. I tend to think of the limen as being the absence of a connection. That there's no direct route for the information to pass between them. And the subconscious, being the very powerful and clever thing that it is, realizes, well, we share one common tool, which is our physical body. So what the subconscious does is it creates physical sensations. This is the sensation where the skin crawls up the back of your neck to warn you of danger. This is the sensation of the feeling in your gut, where you've got agitation in your stomach, and you realize something's wrong. The sensation of somebody staring at you, and your subconscious will get you to turn around and look back at them. What it's doing is it's taking control of your physical senses. It's stimulating your visual cortex. It's stimulating your oral faculties, so that you can hear the sound of a bell clanging, or you might hear a phone ringing before the phone rings. It stimulates your kinesthetic senses. It can stimulate everything. It can stimulate your skin as the biggest organ in the body to create a sense of ambience. You know, that's where your whole body suddenly tingles for some reason, and you've no idea why. It's recreating a sense of ambience. That's saying, pay attention, I'm trying to tell you something really important here. This is really important because I'm dependent upon you for my continued existence. So wake up and listen. And it's effectively using the body to scream at the conscious mind to get it to look around and take note of what's going on. And hopefully those thoughts will come into conscious awareness. That's the theory, and that's ideally the way it would work. And as remote viewers, what we're constantly seeking to do is to improve our sensitivity to those sensations so that we can bring them more quickly and effectively into conscious awareness. So as that information comes in through the mind, what we find is the autonomic nervous system being stimulated, which in turn stimulates the organs, as you see there on the left-hand side. And as that happens, we start to find ourselves experiencing emotions and then feelings, and then they're mapped onto thoughts, which then create our beliefs. So we're constantly scanning our environment to determine our safety. And every piece of information that we're receiving is being assessed. But here's the problem. Sometimes, particularly if you're remote viewing, the information is coming into the subconscious mind, and it's coming in, and a physical sensation is created in the body. Now here's the point. The mind does not store your memories in a linear order. You know, you don't remember everything you did from the age of 0 up to whatever age you are today. It clusters memories together by their emotional effect. So you might see the color red. That reminds you of the first stick of, or the first sweets that you ever ate, which reminds you of your grandmother's lipstick, which reminds you of the smell of the red paint on the first house that you ever bought. And you know, all those kind of happy memories are all grouped together, stimulated by the color red. But sometimes memories are grouped together by the negative emotion that we've experienced. So if a physical sensation occurs in the body because the subconscious is trying to tell us something, and it triggers a set of memories, it may trigger a set of memories bound together by an emotional effect that is we perceive to be traumatic, that we perceive to be dangerous. And what can happen then is that the conscious mind can be overloaded by the emotional impact of that attempt by the subconscious to transfer the information across. This is why some people can just fall out of session because of anxiety that they're experiencing, or because of something gets triggered in them in the middle of a session. Why psychics can fall out of session, because they start to experience things which aren't physically there, but they're being created in the body by the subconscious. So what we're realizing is that the old stimulus response had something missing. That we still have the stimulus, we still have the response, but the response occurs because of an energetic disruption in the biofield. So when you see the snake, it triggers a set of memories and emotions in you that basically blows the lid on your energy system that causes a physical emotional response. I don't have the same memories, so I don't experience that disruption. So the conclusions to this part: the energy body is the template to the physical body. The mind-body duality doesn't exist. You can't separate the mind from the body. They're all one. When you work on the mind, you're working on the body. When you work on the body, you're working on the mind. You can't separate one from the other. But by working directly on the biofield, using the energy body, we know that we can create the fastest, most effective changes, because in effect, we can take out the pattern that's causing the problem. We can reprogram the body. We can dissipate the emotional charge that's causing the problem in the first place. So, I'm just going to check the chat box here to see if there's anything I need to pay attention to before I go on. Okay. So I'm just going to run on here. So what disrupts the biofield? Okay. Well, the first thing you would say is, well, it's the mind. But I just want to get clear around one thing. The brain and the mind are not the same thing. The brain is the physical gray matter inside your cranium. Okay, it's like the chip in the computer. It's the electrical socket in your house that allows you to plug into the electrical system that's wired into your building. The mind is the energy that interpenetrates the brain, the body, and the biofield. There's a form of intelligence there. There's a form of consciousness there, interpenetrating the physical form and the energy form. That's what the mind is. But the problem is you don't have one mind. As we know, we have two. We have the conscious and the subconscious. And as somebody said, you know, the conscious is like the top of the iceberg. The subconscious goes deep, goes really, really deep. You don't see a fraction of it. And as somebody said once, you know, each mind has its own well, as Lynn said, each mind has its own personality. But another guy I heard once said, you know, have you ever tried to change your mind when you discover that your mind has a mind of its own? It's very true. So, we have the subconscious mind, incredibly powerful. We have the conscious mind, very much like the weaker brother or the weaker sister. Subconscious is incredibly powerful. It's accessing information beyond our physical being. It's processing at about 4 billion bits of information a second. Doesn't do time, works through different dimensions. An amazing, amazing tool. And then we have the poor conscious mind over here on the right. And you'd wonder, well, you know, at best it can handle 6 or 7 processes at any given time. You know, you're aware of the fact that you're sitting on the seat. You're probably paying attention, hopefully, to what I'm saying. And you're looking at the screen. You might have something in your immediate environment that's distracting you. But that's about it. Everything else is taken care of by the subconscious. Your immune system, your relationship to gravity that's keeping you on the chair, your wider awareness of what's happening around you. But here's the thing. Even though the conscious mind is only processing at about 2,000 bits a second, it's really good at organizing things. It's able to organize information. It's able to put it into sequence. And it's able to report. That's the strength of the conscious mind. It's the one that's able to report what's going on and tell us what's happening. Because the subconscious can't do that. We're relying on the conscious mind to tell us. But I've noticed, and I don't know whether this is the ego or what it is, I've noticed at times I have found myself observing the subconscious and the conscious as I'm working through a session. And I'm wondering, and this is just a speculation on my part, is there some kind of overmind? Is there an observer mind involved here? Is there some higher level of consciousness to which the subconscious and conscious are subordinate? Because I've found that, and I'm going to take you to an exercise in a minute to explain this, I've found that I can create dialogues between the subconscious and the conscious mind to make viewing much more effective. Because one of the key things is when we get agreement, not just between the subconscious and the conscious, but between the subconscious, conscious, and observer mind, I found that session data becomes much more clear. It comes in much faster. It seems to be much more accurate. And a lot of the emotional stuff doesn't get in the way as much as it did before. So one of the tricks, I suppose, or techniques, if you want to be more accurate about it, that I've used is I've used a visualization technique to set up an internal dialogue, a negotiation between the subconscious, the conscious, and the observer. And the way I do it is this. I say, each of us have roles and responsibilities. The subconscious is incredibly powerful, but its responsibility is to get the information that we're looking for and can communicate it effectively to the conscious mind so that it can use it. The conscious mind is less powerful, but it's really good at reporting. So its duty is to get the information, organize it, and report it in a way that's useful for us or for the client in its most accurate form. And in the role of the observer mind, of me, of the observer, I perceive myself as being the project manager in this process of managing the relationship to make sure everything works together. And I was at the IRIS conference. I gave this workshop at the IRIS conference in Paris earlier this year. And I took the students who attended the workshop through this exercise, and they found this really, really effective.